Hey, podcast listeners, this is Dr. Hugh coming at you with True Health Recovery Podcast number 17. And today, what I'm going to be talking about and sharing with you is mold. I have a very special guest, and that's his labs. So what I'm going to go over is I'm going to go over one of my clients who did 4 different mold tests. And I'm going to walk you through this process so you can understand like what's happening with mold. And basically, he started off at 5,700, which is a marker for mold. And then on the 4th test, it was down to 0. So he went from 5,700 to 0. So what I'm going to do is in the show notes, if you just want to put this on pause or scroll down to the show notes, you're going to see a link. It's going to be the very first link. It's going to be show notes, or it's going to say something about show notes or mold 5,700 to 0. There's going to be a link there. It's going to be the first link that you're going to see. And this is going to be actually his labs. Now, this guy, we're going to call this guy David. So David is a patient and he has basically bad mold. You want to click that link and open it up. So if you're working at the gym or wherever you're at, and if you're in your backyard, you can actually see these labs. There's 4 of them because I'm going to be going over some numbers. And for me, I'm a visual guy. So I like things to be visual. I'm going to be saying the numbers on the podcast, but you actually have access to his actual labs and the 4 different labs just by clicking the link below. Okay, so what happened is he got damaged by antibiotics and he had a chronic condition, and he was a guy that I would say would be the epitome of health. He would he would go to the gym 4, 5, 6 days a week. He would run. He was in just pristine health. He took this antibiotic for a sinus infection, chronic sinus infections, and then boom, all of a sudden that he gets damaged. So we've been working with him. And then one of the things I do with anyone that is suffering from a chronic condition, you have to rule out mold. If you have mold in your body, and if you have a chronic condition and no one's been able to figure it out, there's a high probability that you have this thing called mold in your body. Mold is very dangerous. Mold has been around since the beginning of time. It lives through atomic bombs. It lives in your body. You could have a mold exposure 25 years ago and you could still have mold. Now, one of the things that I just want to just kind of share with you and explain on what happens with mold is if mold doesn't have a threat, if it's not under stress, it's not going to produce its poison. So this test that I'm going to go over is called a Mycotox Profile. M-Y-C-O-T-O-X. Mycotox Profile. Now, this is a urine sample. And what this is actually measuring is to see if the mold poisons are in your urine. So let me just give you a reference here. So basically your kidneys, right, filter out all your blood and then there's water. So what's in your urine it can be anywhere between 100 and 1,000 times more concentrated in your urine than in your blood. That's why you want to do this test. It's an organic acid test, or I should say it's actually a mold test. It's a mold test through urine. So when I run this test, I usually do 2 tests. I do the organic acid test and then the mold test. So today we're just going to focus on the Mycotox Profile or the mold test. So you can have an exposure from mold and it can be sitting in your gut for 25 years. And then what happens is the mold doesn't produce its poison. So the mold can sit in your gut for, let's say, 15 or 20 years. But if it's not stressed, if it doesn't feel like it's under a threat, it's not going to produce its poison. Just like a snake. If you have a snake, excuse me. If you have a poisonous snake, like the snake is just going to be minding its own business, but once it's threatened, this is when the snake will bite you and produce its poison and put poison in your bloodstream. This is the same thing with mold. Mold can be completely fine. We all have mold in our body, like for sure. We all have mold. There's no doubt about it. Now, if we all have mold, some people have what I would say weak constitutions, or they're susceptible to mold damage, right? So we all have mold, and what happens is maybe your body's weak, and then you're under a lot of stress, and maybe you take antibiotics, and the stuff is in your gut. And when you take these antibiotics, the mold sees this as a threat. just like the snake sees a predator as a threat. So the snake's going to prop up, it's going to get stressed out, and it's going to come out and bite you and produce poison, put poison in your bloodstream. The same thing with mold. If mold perceives a threat, it starts to produce its poisons, which are called mycotoxins. So we have mold. Mold can be fine, and then mold produces a poison called mycotoxin. Now on this test, and I'm looking at his test right now, these 4 different tests. I think this test checks for, I want to say 15 different mold poisons. So what I'm looking at right here is a mold called Aspergillus. Now that would be like the snake. The snake is called Aspergillus, and then the snake can produce different toxins or different poisons. Now we're just going to focus on one thing, and this is called gliotoxin. Now, if you're listening to this, just go down and hit that link to this PDF, man, because this is going to make this whole podcast like real to you. And I put some time in developing this PDF for you so you get the most out of this podcast, because I know your time is valuable. And like, I love it when podcasts leave notes. So we did this first test on August 26th of 2020. So August 26th of 2020. Now, he has anxiety. So his whole life was completely changed. He has anxiety, or I should say had. The key word is had. All these things, symptoms are had. He had sleep problems, had anxiety, had depolarization, had brain fog, had fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, couldn't sleep, anxiety, depression. I mean, you name it, this fella had it, right? So we did the testing. He's like, there's no way I'm going to have mold. A lot of people say, there's no way I can have mold. And then I'm like, well, let's just do the testing and rule this out. It's not a very expensive test. And to rule out mold, if you have it or you do not, is so critical. This can be a case changer. This could change your life, literally. If you're out there listening to this and you have a chronic condition, you need to do a mold test through urine. It must be through urine. And I like the Great Plains. That's the company. The Great Plains, the mycotoxin test. So if you open this PDF up, you're going to see the 4 tests, and then I label the 4 tests, number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you're going to see a big 1 there. It's going to be a green 1, and right to the left of the 1 is going to be the date, right? So it's very clear. There's going to be the date there. I underlined the date in red, so you can't miss it. So lab number 1 was done August 26th of 2020. Big green stamp, boom, boom, there it is. You move down to the bottom, you're going to see a graph. You're going to move down to the bottom, and you're going to see gliotoxin. And the normal range is less than 200. Okay, that's normal. Now, he has 5,764. So I'm just going to, just for simplicity on the podcast, I'm just going to say 7,500. So his gliotoxin, which again is the poison that the mold is making. When the mold is threatened, it produces poison so it can survive. And mold is very, very poisonous. Mold will produce its own poison to actually kill other mold around it, right? So they battle each other for space and they produce these poisons. So one of the poisons is called gliotoxin. So August 26th, 2020, it was at 5,700. Should be less than 200. So this is an eye-opener. This is a case-changing lab. There's no sense doing labs over and over and over again, the same labs that you've had. You go to the conventional system, let's do blood work. Well, they've already checked your cholesterol. They've already checked your sodium, right? They've already checked your proteins, and they're the same. They've been the same today as they were last year, the year before, 5 years ago, and 10 years ago. You have to do testing that's going to figure out a different result to get a different change in your pattern, right? You need to do something different with a different test to see what's going on. So I asked him, I said, you think you've ever been exposed to mold? And most people say, no, right? And he was in the construction business. So this comes back and we're like, wow, what's going on? You have mold. So then there's a whole process to go through the mold. And in this podcast, I'm not going to get into the details of that. I'm just going to go over the labs. All right. So then what happens is then we started doing detox. And, one of the things that he actually did have a humidifier, right? A humidifier is one of those that pushes water into the air. I said, well, do you have a humidifier? Yes, he has a humidifier. And I'm like, okay, well, open it up and see if there's mold in there. Guess what? Loaded with mold. So he's breathing in mold from the humidifier, and we also found mold in his house, or mold, I should say, water in his house. He had a water leak in his house. Now, a lot of people, in my experience, aren't actually living in a moldy place. It was a past exposure. So he could have had a past exposure, and he could be living in mold right now, like what we found on David. So we started doing some protocols. We obviously got rid of the dehumidifier, started doing some detoxification protocols, and then basically September 21st of 2020. So we're talking about a month. Okay, let's say a month. So the first test was August 26th. Second test was August 21st of 2020. Then his lab came down to 2393. So I'm just going to say 2300. So the first lab in October was 5,700. A month later, it was 2,300. So we decreased his mold exposure in 1 month by almost half. Now, if you have mold burden exposure in your body and you can reduce your mold by half in 1 month, what do you think that would do to your chronic condition? It would be completely changed. But if you don't test it, you're never going to know. And now you have to test it. But then you have to work with a provider that actually knows what to do and how to detox it and get it out of your body. It's not just as simple as, okay, the humidifier, let's get rid of that. It's in the body. And you have to actually grab this mold and pull it out. You can't kill mold. Mold isn't like a bacteria. Right? If you have bacteria, those are living organisms. Mold is not alive. Mold is like pollen. Everyone has seen pollen. Pollen's not alive, but you can physically see it. And so this is the same thing with mold. Mold isn't alive, so you can't kill it. You got to detox it out. You got to pull it out. You got to grab it out. And there's a whole bunch of different things that you can do to do that. Now, you got to be careful because you got to make sure that your detoxification pathways are working correctly. Are you pooping on a regular basis? Like if you have constipation, you don't want to start pulling mold out because you need to poop and move that stuff out of your system. So when we look at getting someone better that has a problem, we got to look at detoxification pathways. Are you pooping 2 to 3 times per day? No constipation, no diarrhea, no bloating, no gas. How is your GI system? You got to get that in order first. Then you can start pulling mold. Then you can start doing these protocols. Okay. So September 21st, 2020, a month later, that his lab, his gliotoxin was 2,300. Okay, 2,300. Then in January 12th, 2021. Okay, January 12th, 2021, and this is number 3. Now, if you're looking at this PDF, you're going to see number 3. You're going to see his gliotoxin is 1,592. So we'll just round it to 1,500. So he started in August of 5,700. Then September, we got him down to 2,300. Then in January, we got him down to 1,500. So we're slowly making increments and we're pulling these poisons out. And guess what's happening to his health? It's going what? It's going up. When God created us, he created us to be healthy. He created us to have life, to have enjoyment, to have viability, to enjoy the things that we have. So if you're sick out there with a chronic condition, we have to figure out what's hindering your body's ability to heal itself and then take that and remove that toxin or that poison. And then we have to figure out what does your body need. So the big scope of it is we're removing toxin and we're adding things what your body needs. And this would be like a polytherapy approach. When I see clients, it's a polytherapy approach. There's no magic bullet. People want to know what supplements should I take? There's no magic supplement. It's a customized, individual, tailored, custom program, right? If you have someone that has constipation and is not pooping, you have to figure that out. Now, if you're going 2 to 3 times a day and you have good GI system and good bowels, then you don't really need to figure that out. So that's a whole different plan when it comes to someone. Okay. So in January 12th of 2020, it was 1,500. Then in May 10th of 2021, it was down to, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll, 0. May 10th of 2021, it was 0. So his life is going to completely transform because what did we do? We did an individualized, custom, tailored program that met David's needs. Now, my dad died in the medical system. He died at 69 on like 15, 16 medications a day. That system is not customized individual treatment. That is cookie cutter treatment. They don't do these tests because it's not cookie cutter. It's not what your insurance company approved. Right? So we did something completely different and he got his life back. So this can be you. You can get better. If you have questions, you can feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to help you. I provide these resources because I want to help human suffering. So let me just summarize this one more time in the test. August 26th, his gliotoxin was 5,700. September 21st, basically a month later, it was down to 2,300. So that's September 21st, 2020, it was 2,300. Then January 12th, 2021, basically another 3.5 months later, it was 1,500, his gliotoxin. And then we took it another 4 months later, May 10th of 2021, it was exactly 0. Okay, so if you're still listening to this, I appreciate you. Grab the PDF, look at that, look at these numbers, and just remember, is where there is help, there's hope. You can get better. God designed us to be better, to be healthy. You can be well. You just need some guidance. You just need a guide to take you from point A, B, C, D. My programs are not complex. They are simple. Why are they simple? Because I've laid it out. Because I have enough experience. It's like, okay, David, let's do step 1. That's easy. Let's do step 2. That's easy. Let's do step 3. This is easy. Let's do step 4. That is easy. What it requires is an expert guide like myself. I'm just an orchestra conductor that can see what's going on and move you in the right direction. So thank you for being part of this community. If you know someone that needs help, please share this content with them. And remember, where there's help, there's hope. Take care. Bye-bye.